The great hall of Valanthos Prime stretched out like a frozen ocean under pale blue lights. Crystal pillars rose from the polished floor and disappeared into darkness far above. Thousands of beings from dozens of worlds moved through the space, their voices creating a constant hum that filled every corner of the massive chamber. Daniel Cole stood near one of the smaller entrances and watched. He was a man of 45 years with tired eyes and calm hands. His dark hair had begun to turn gray at the sides, and the lines on his face told stories of difficult decisions and sleepless nights. He wore the simple black uniform of the Terran Diplomatic Corps, no medals or decorations. Just a small Earth emblem on his chest, that this was the Galactic Assembly, a gathering that happened once every 10 years on this neutral world. Representatives from over 40 different species came here to make deals, form alliances, and measure each other's strength. For most of these civilizations, this event was routine. They had been attending for thousands of years. For humanity, this was only their second time. Earth had discovered faster than light travel just 18 years ago. In the vast timeline of galactic history, humans were newborns taking their first steps. Most alien species looked at them the way an adult might look at a child pretending to be important. Daniel understood this. He had studied every species that would attend the assembly. He knew their histories, their customs, their languages, and their prejudices. He knew that the Valori considered any species under 1,000,000 years old to be barely worth noticing. He knew that the Korath thought humans smelt strange. He knew that the Minduri believed humans were mentally unstable because they slept every single day. None of this bothered him. He had not come here to change minds or prove humanity's worth. He had come to do a job. His mission was simple: make contact with the Valori Empire and establish the beginning of a trade relationship. Not a grand alliance. Not a treaty of friendship. Just a small door opened between two civilizations. His superiors had been clear about expectations. Any progress at all would be considered a success. No progress would not be considered a failure. Daniel had accepted these terms without complaint. He was not a man who needed glory or recognition. He simply wanted to do his work well and go home. The Valori delegation entered the hall through the main archway, and the crowd parted for them like water around a stone. There were 17 nobles in flowing robes of deep purple and silver, 40 servants carrying various items and attending to their masters, and at the center of it all, Princess Lyrithan of the 8th House. She was beautiful in a way that seemed almost unreal. Her skin glowed with a soft silver light, and her eyes were the color of purple gemstones. She moved with the confidence of someone who had never been told no, never been challenged, never been made to feel small. She was 200 years old, which made her young by Valori standards, but she had already lived twice as long as any human ever would. Daniel watched her settle onto an elevated platform that servants had prepared. Other delegates approached her with gifts and words of respect. She acknowledged some with small nods and ignored others completely. Her power was obvious in every gesture. He waited. There was a proper time to approach Valari nobility, and doing it wrong would end any chance of conversation. He had spent 3 years learning their language and customs for this moment. 3 years of study for what might be a 5-minute meeting. When the time was right, Daniel walked forward. He moved through the crowd without pushing or hurrying. Some aliens glanced at him with curiosity. Others did not notice him at all. Humans were still new enough to be unfamiliar to many species. He stopped at the correct distance from the princess's platform, exactly 12 steps away as Valori custom demanded. He bowed at the precise angle reserved for a representative of a minor power addressing higher nobility. Not too deep, which would seem desperate. Not too shallow, which would seem disrespectful. Then he spoke in the Valori language, his pronunciation careful and clear. Your Highness. This humble representative brings greetings from the people of Earth. We thank you for the honor of your presence and ask nothing but a moment of your attention." The princess looked down at him. For a long moment, she said nothing. Her purple eyes studied him the way someone might study an unusual insect. "You speak our language," she said. Her voice was musical and cold. "Yes, Your Highness. I have studied it for 3 years in preparation for this meeting." 3 years. She smiled slightly. "That is nearly 4% of your entire lifespan, is it not? How much time humans must waste on simple tasks." Daniel did not react to the insult. "The Valori language is beautiful and complex, Your Highness." The time was well spent. He reached into his jacket and produced his credentials, a formal document that identified him and stated his authority to negotiate on Earth's behalf. He held it out with both hands, palms facing upward, as custom required. "I am authorized to discuss the possibility of trade between our peoples," he continued. "Earth has resources and technologies that may be of interest to the Empire. We seek only the opportunity to demonstrate our value as potential partners." The princess did not take the document. She did not even look at it around them. Other delegates had stopped their conversations. Daniel could feel their attention like heat on his skin. The Valori were the most powerful civilization in the known galaxy. How they treated other species often determined how everyone else treated them too. Princess Lyrithan leaned forward slightly on her platform. The smile on her silver face grew wider, but there was no warmth in it. "Tell me, human," she said, switching to galactic standards so that everyone nearby could understand her words. "Do you know how old my grandmother is?" Daniel remained still. "I do not, Your Highness. She is 9,000 years old. When she was born, your species had not yet discovered fire. You were animals hiding from predators in the tall grass. And now you stand before me with documents and proposals, playing at civilization." She laughed, and several of her attendants laughed with her. Daniel felt the weight of every eye in the hall pressing down on him. But his expression did not change. His hands did not shake. He simply stood and waited for her to finish. He had prepared for this. He had known it might happen. And he had decided long before arriving here that no word spoken in anger or pride would make him forget why he had come. He was here to open a door. If that door remained closed today, then perhaps it would open tomorrow or next year or in the next generation. Humans were patient. They had learned to be. The princess was still smiling at him, waiting for a reaction. She would not get one. The laughter faded slowly, but the smiles remained. Princess Lyrithan looked down at Daniel with the expression of someone enjoying a private joke. Her attendants watched him with obvious amusement, whispering to each other behind delicate silver hands. Daniel kept his credentials extended, his posture unchanged. He had heard every word. He understood what she was doing. And still he waited, giving her the chance to accept his offer despite her mockery. The princess tilted her head to one side, studying him like a scientist examining a simple creature. "You do not react," she observed. "Interesting. Perhaps your handlers trained you well before sending you here. Tell me, little human, can you do other tricks? Can you sit and stay when commanded?" More laughter from her attendants. A few delegates from other species joined in, eager to show their agreement with the powerful Valori. Daniel lowered his credentials slowly and placed the document back inside his jacket. His movements were calm and deliberate. "Your Highness," he said quietly, "I am here to discuss trade. If you wish to discuss other matters, I am happy to listen." Princess Lyrithan's smile flickered for just a moment. She had expected anger by now. She had expected him to defend his species with passionate words and wounded pride. That was what young civilizations always did when confronted with their own smallness. But this human simply stood there, Patient and unmoved, like a stone in a river. It annoyed her. "Let me explain something to you," she said, her voice growing sharper. "The Valori Empire has existed for over 2 million years. We built cities among the stars while your ancestors were learning to walk upright. We have watched 10,000 species rise from their birth worlds, full of hope and dreams and foolish ambition." She leaned forward, and her purple eyes seemed to glow brighter. "Do you know what happened to those species? The ones who came before you, who stood where you stand now, who believed they could matter in this galaxy?" Daniel said nothing. He simply listened. "They are gone," the princess continued. "Dust, forgotten. Their languages are dead. Their cultures are erased. Their greatest achievements are ruins that no one visits. Some of them lasted a few thousand years before they destroyed themselves. Others simply faded away, unable to compete with older and wiser civilizations. And a few, the truly unlucky ones, caught the attention of powers they could not understand and were swept aside like insects." She spread her hands in a gesture that seemed almost sympathetic. "This is your future, human. Not in my lifetime, perhaps not even in the lifetime of my grandchildren, but someday soon by our standards, your species will join all the others in oblivion. Your Earth will be forgotten. Your name will be erased from history. Everything you build, everything you dream, everything you hope for will amount to nothing." The hall had grown completely silent. Every delegate, every servant, every guard was watching this exchange. Daniel could feel their eyes on him, waiting to see how the human would respond to this judgment. Princess Lyrathan smiled again, but now there was something almost like pity in her expression. "So please," she said softly, "spare me your trade agreements and diplomatic proposals. Go back to your little world. Enjoy the brief moment of existence that you have been given. The Valori have no interest in forming bonds with species that will not survive long enough to honor them." She waved her hand dismissively, the way one might shoo away a fly. "You are dismissed." The silence stretched out like a held breath. Every being in that hall waited for Daniel's response. They expected anger. They expected tears. They expected the emotional outburst that young species were famous for. Daniel Cole looked at the princess for a long moment. His brown eyes met her purple ones without flinching. His face remained calm, almost peaceful. There was no anger in his expression, no wounded pride, no desperation. He simply looked at her as if he was seeing something she could not see herself. Then, without a word, he turned and walked away. His footsteps echoed in the silent hall. He did not hurry. He did not look back. He walked with the same steady pace he had used when approaching, neither faster nor slower. His hands remained at his sides, relaxed and still. Princess Lyrathan watched him go. Her smile faded slowly, replaced by something she could not quite identify. She had delivered speeches like this before, to other young species, and they had always reacted with anger or shame or desperate attempts to prove themselves worthy. This human had done none of those things. He had simply accepted her words and walked away in silence. It should have felt like victory. She had put an inferior species in its place. She had demonstrated Valori superiority before the entire assembly. Her attendants were already praising her wit and wisdom. But something about the human's silence bothered her. Something about the look in his eyes as he turned away. He had not seemed defeated. He had not seemed angry. He had seemed almost sad, but not for himself. For her. Daniel reached the exit and passed through without pausing. The doors closed behind him, and he was gone. In the hall, conversation slowly resumed. Delegates returned to their negotiations. Servants continued their duties. The assembly went on as it always had, as it had for millions of years. before humans existed and would continue for millions of years after they were gone. Princess Lyrithan returned her attention to other matters. There were important alliances to consider, valuable trade routes to discuss, and political games to play. The human was already fading from her thoughts, becoming just another brief encounter with an irrelevant species. But late that night, alone in her chambers, she found herself standing at the window and staring out at the stars. She thought about the human's eyes, the calm in them, the patience, the strange dignity of his silence. She thought about the way he had walked away, without protest or plea. And for the first time in her 200 years of life, Princess Lyrithan of the 8th House felt something she could not explain. Thought it was not guilt. The Valori did not feel guilt over inferior species. Thought it was not regret. She had spoken only truth. Thought it was something else. Something uncomfortable. Something like a door she had closed without realizing what was on the other side. She pushed the feeling away and went to sleep. In the morning, she had forgotten all about it. But the universe had not forgotten. And somewhere, aboard a small Terran vessel preparing to leave Valanthos Prime, Daniel Cole was writing his report. His words were simple and factual. He did not mention the insults. He did not describe his feelings. He simply stated that the Valori had declined to engage and that further attempts would be unproductive. He recommended patience. Earth agreed. And the silence began. The Terran vessel Endurance hung in orbit above Valanthos Prime for 3 more days after Daniel's meeting with the princess. During that time, the human delegation was busy with activities that seemed ordinary to outside observers. They attended social functions. They exchanged polite greetings with other species. They participated in minor discussions about trade and cultural exchange. But something had changed. The Korath Collective had been negotiating with humanity for months before the assembly. Their agricultural worlds were struggling to produce enough food for their growing population, and human scientists had developed remarkable new farming technologies. Vertical farms that could grow crops in any environment. Plants engineered to thrive in harsh conditions. Methods to produce food in space. Stations and underground colonies. The Korath delegation approached the human team on the 2nd day, expecting to finalize their discussions. "We are ready to move forward," the Korath representative said. His rough gray skin shifted with anticipation. "Our people are eager to implement your farming techniques." The human negotiator, a woman named Sandra Miller, smiled politely. "We appreciate your interest in our agricultural programs. However, we have reviewed our current priorities and determined that we cannot proceed with external partnerships at this time." The Korath representative blinked his large dark eyes in confusion. "I do not understand. We were so close to agreement. What has changed?" "Nothing has changed," Sandra replied calmly. "We simply need to focus our resources on internal development for the foreseeable future. We thank you for your time and wish the Korath Collective success in addressing your food production challenges." She shook his hand, gathered her documents, and walked away. Similar conversations happened throughout the remaining days of the assembly. The Mindari hegemony had been interested in human medical research. Their scientists had learned that humans had made surprising progress in understanding neural regeneration, the ability to repair damaged brain tissue. This was important to the Mindari because their species lived for hundreds of years, but often suffered mental decline in their later centuries. When the Mindari representative approached the human medical team, he received the same polite smile and the same careful words. "We appreciate your interest, but we are not accepting research partnerships at this time. We hope you find the solutions you need." The Sentinel Alliance had been planning a joint exploration mission with Terran scientists. The humans had developed new navigation methods that allowed travel through regions of space that other species considered too dangerous. The Sentinels were eager to combine their resources with human expertise. Their proposal was declined, politely, firmly, without explanation. One by one, every offer that humanity had brought to the assembly was withdrawn. Trade agreements were cancelled. Cultural exchange programs were ended. Scientific partnerships were closed. And through it all, the humans remained perfectly pleasant. They did not raise their voices. They did not make accusations. They did not even seem upset. They simply stopped offering what they had come to share. Ambassador Patricia Holloway was the senior human representative at the assembly. She was a tall woman with silver hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed to notice everything. On the final day of the gathering, she called a brief meeting with representatives from several major civilizations. Earth thanks the Galactic Assembly for the opportunity to participate in these proceedings, she said, her voice warm and gracious. We have learned a great deal during our time here and have gained valuable insight into our place in the galactic community. She paused, and her smile remained perfectly steady. At this time, we have determined that our presence here is not beneficial to either party. Humanity will be withdrawing from active participation in interstellar affairs for the foreseeable future. We wish all member species continued prosperity and peace. A Karth diplomat raised his hand. Ambassador, may I ask why? What has happened to cause this change in your approach? Patricia Holloway looked at him with kind eyes. Nothing has happened. We have simply reflected on our situation and made a decision that we believe is best for our people. We hold no ill will toward any species. We simply wish to focus on our own development for a time. But for how long? Another delegate asked. For as long as necessary, the ambassador replied. We will know when the time is right to return. Until then, we wish you all well. She shook hands with those who approached her, accepted their confused best wishes, and boarded the Endurance without looking back. The human ship left orbit that evening. It passed through the outer reaches of the Volanthos system and vanished into the darkness between stars. Other delegates discussed the withdrawal among themselves. Some were puzzled. Some were relieved. A few were concerned, but most simply shrugged and moved on. Humanity was a young species, barely significant in the grand scheme of things. If they wanted to retreat to their corner of the galaxy and sulk, that was their choice. The assembly had existed long before humans arrived, and would continue, long after they were forgotten. Princess Lyrathan heard about the human withdrawal while reviewing trade reports from her family's merchant fleet. An attendant mentioned it in passing, as minor news hardly worth noting. The humans have left, Your Highness. They have withdrawn all their offers and returned to their home territory. The princess nodded without looking up from her documents. As expected, they realized their place. Yes, Your Highness. The attendant left, and Lyrathan continued her work. But later that night, she found herself thinking about it. The humans had not seemed angry at the assembly. They had not seemed defeated. They had simply stopped participating, calmly and completely, as if they had made a decision and intended to keep it. She thought about the human delegate who had stood before her, the one whose name she had never asked, the one who had walked away in silence. Was this because of her words? Had her speech to him caused humanity to withdraw from galactic affairs entirely? The thought was absurd. One conversation with one minor species representative could not possibly have such consequences. She dismissed it from her mind, but somewhere deep inside, in a place she would never acknowledge, a small voice wondered, and in the silence of space, aboard ships traveling back to Earth, the humans began to plan. They did not plan for revenge. They did not plan for war. They planned for something far more patient and far more powerful. They planned to grow. They planned to build. They planned to become something that could never be dismissed. Again and they were willing to take as long as necessary. 50 years passed in the galaxy like water flowing through ancient rivers. The Galactic Assembly met 5 more times on Valanthos Prime. Treaties were signed and broken. Alliances formed and dissolved. Wars erupted on distant frontiers and ended in fragile peace. The great civilizations continued their endless dance of power and politics. Humanity was not there. The humans had retreated to their small corner of space, a modest territory that contained Earth and a dozen colony worlds. They maintained basic communications with neighboring systems, enough to prevent misunderstandings and border conflicts. But they did not trade. They did not negotiate. They did not participate in galactic affairs. At first, no one noticed their absence. Humanity had been such a small presence in the galaxy that their withdrawal barely created a ripple. Other species had more important matters to consider. But as decades passed, strange things began to happen. The Korath Collective faced a crisis. Their agricultural worlds had been declining for years, struggling to feed their massive population. New diseases attacked their crops. Climate patterns shifted on their most productive planets. The traditional Korath farming methods that had worked for millennia suddenly seemed inadequate. They needed new technology. They needed the human farming systems they had once been offered. A Korath delegation traveled to the edge of human space and requested a meeting. They were greeted politely by a human official at an orbital station near the border. "We appreciate your journey," the official said. "How may we help you?" The Korath representative explained their situation. Their people were struggling. Millions faced food shortages. They were willing to pay any price for access to human agricultural technology. The human official listened carefully. When the representative finished speaking, she nodded with what appeared to be genuine sympathy. "We understand your difficulties, and we're sorry to hear of your struggles. However, Earth is not accepting partnership applications at this time. We wish the Korath Collective success in addressing these challenges." The Korath representative stared at her in disbelief. "You do not understand. Our people are suffering. We are asking for your help." "We understand completely," the official replied, "and we sincerely wish we could assist. But our resources are committed to internal development. We hope you find the solutions you need elsewhere." She smiled politely and ended the meeting. The Korath delegation returned home empty-handed, confused and angry. They had offered wealth beyond measure. They had offered political support and military alliance. The humans had refused everything. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as years became decades. The Mindari hegemony developed a terrible medical crisis. A degenerative disease began spreading through their population, attacking their neural networks and causing slow mental decline. Their scientists worked desperately to find a cure, but progress was painfully slow. They knew the humans had been researching neural regeneration. They sent ambassadors to request collaboration. The response was the same: polite, sympathetic, final. "We are not accepting research partnerships at this time. We hope you find the answers you seek." The Sentinel Alliance encountered a spatial anomaly, a tear in the fabric of space that was slowly expanding toward 3 of their core systems. Their scientists projected that millions would need to be evacuated within a century. They had heard that human researchers had made breakthroughs in understanding such phenomena. They reached out through every diplomatic channel available. The humans declined to assist. By the time a full century had passed since the assembly where Princess Lyrithan had mocked a human delegate, something strange had become impossible to ignore. Humanity was thriving. Long-range sensors detected human vessels traveling through regions of space that other species had declared impassable. Human colony ships were spotted establishing settlements on worlds that everyone believed were uninhabitable. Human technology, glimpsed in brief encounters at the borders of their territory, had advanced far beyond what anyone expected. The Valori Empire sent scouts to investigate. 3 ships traveled to the edge of human space, identified themselves, and requested communication. A human vessel appeared within hours. It was sleek and elegant, its design unlike anything in Valori databases. The ship acknowledged the Valori presence, transmitted a brief message of greeting, and then continued on its course without further contact. The Valori scouts followed at a distance, trying to learn more about human capabilities. The human vessel simply accelerated beyond their ability to track and vanished into deep space. Princess Lyrathan, now a senior member of the Valori High Council, read the scout reports with growing unease. She was 250 years old now, experienced in politics and power. She had risen far since that assembly gathering long ago, but she still remembered the human delegate who had stood before her. The one who had walked away without a word. She had never learned his name. She had never thought to ask. He was probably dead by now, she realized. Humans live such brief lives. Whatever reaction he might have had to her words had died with him decades ago. And yet here was his species, stronger than ever. Ignoring the galaxy that had ignored them, the Valori Emperor summoned his advisors to discuss the human situation. Some argued that humanity should be confronted, forced to share their technology through economic pressure or military threat. Others suggested that perhaps it was time to approach the humans with respect and genuine offers of partnership. The Emperor listened to all arguments and made no decision. The humans had done nothing aggressive. They had violated no treaties. They had simply chosen to keep to themselves. How do you punish a species for being successful on their own? How do you force cooperation from a civilization that wants nothing from you? The questions had no good answers, and in the silence between stars, humanity continued to grow. They built stations in the void. They colonized moons and asteroids and worlds that no one else wanted. They developed technologies that other species could not understand. They trained their children and grandchildren for a future that would arrive long after the current generation was gone. They planted trees whose shade they would never enjoy. They built bridges they would never cross. They prepared for a day that their great-grandchildren would see. And when that day finally came, they would not ask for permission. They would simply arrive. 100 years after the assembly, where a young princess had mocked a patient man, humanity returned to the galactic stage. They did not send ambassadors first. They did not request meetings or submit proposals. They simply appeared, without warning, without announcement, without asking permission from anyone. The first sign came in Korath space. The Korath famine had grown desperate. Entire planets were rationing food. Millions had already died, and millions more would follow. Their government had tried everything, begged every ally, exhausted every resource. Nothing had worked. Then the human ships arrived. 30 vessels dropped out of faster-than-light travel in orbit around the most affected Korath world. They were enormous, each one larger than any cargo ship the Korath had ever seen. And they were full. Food. Billions of tons of food. Enough to feed the starving populations for years. The human fleet broadcast a simple message. We are here to help. Where would you like us to deliver these supplies? The Korath government was too shocked to respond at first. When they finally managed to coordinate a reply, asking 1,000 questions about terms and conditions and payment, the humans cut them off. There are no conditions. There is no payment. Tell us where your people are hungry, and we will bring them food. Within days, the human ships had distributed their cargo across 12 worlds. Medical teams accompanied the supplies, treating the sick and training local workers in nutrition and care. Engineers helped repair broken infrastructure and improve local food production. And then, Before any Karath official could properly thank them, the humans left. The pattern repeated across the galaxy. The Mindari plague had become a death sentence for their species. Millions were dying every year, their minds slowly dissolving as the disease destroyed their neural networks. Their hospitals were full. Their scientists had given up hope. Human medical vessels arrived without announcement. They carried treatments that stopped the disease in its tracks. Therapies that repaired damaged neural tissue. Techniques that the Mindari had never imagined possible. The human doctors worked around the clock, saving patients who had been considered beyond help. They trained Mindari physicians in the new methods. They left behind supplies and equipment and detailed instructions, and then they were gone. The Sentinel spatial anomaly had grown critical. 3 star systems were being slowly consumed by the tier in space. Evacuations had begun, but there was not enough time, not enough ships, not enough anywhere else for billions of refugees to go. Human engineers appeared at the edge of the anomaly with equipment that looked impossibly advanced. They worked for 72 hours straight, their vessels dancing at the edge of destruction. When they finished, the anomaly had been stabilized. It would take centuries to fully close, but the immediate danger had passed. The Sentinels offered payment, alliance, eternal friendship. The humans politely declined everything and departed. News of these events spread across the galaxy like fire. The species that had dismissed humanity, ignored humanity, mocked humanity for a century, were now receiving gifts beyond measure. And humanity asked for nothing in return. The Valori Emperor demanded an explanation. Ambassador Catherine Burke agreed to meet with him in the great throne room of the Valori capital world. She was a woman of middle years, with steady gray eyes and an expression of calm patience that seemed familiar somehow. The Emperor sat on his throne of crystal and light, surrounded by his advisors and nobles. Princess Lyrithan stood among them, now ancient by human standards, but still young for a Valori. She watched the human ambassador with eyes that held memories of a conversation from a century ago. "Explain yourself," the Emperor demanded. "You isolate your species for 100 years. You refuse all contact, all trade, all communication. And now you return to shower our rivals with gifts and assistance. What game are you playing?" Ambassador Burke stood before the throne without fear. She did not bow as deeply as protocol demanded. She did not seem impressed by the crystal and light. "We are not playing games," she said simply. "We are doing what we believe is right, right?" The Emperor leaned forward. "You help our enemies and offer nothing to us. How is that right? They are not our enemies. They are civilizations in need. We had the ability to help them, so we did. But why? What do you gain?" Ambassador Burke smiled. It was a patient smile, a knowing smile, a smile that seemed to carry the weight of 100 years of silence. "Your Highness asked the wrong question. You asked what we gain. You should have asked who we are." She took a step forward, and her voice carried clearly through the vast chamber. 100 years ago, a representative from Earth came to the Galactic Assembly. He offered friendship and partnership to your people. In return, he received mockery and dismissal. He was told that humanity was temporary, forgettable, dust waiting to scatter in the wind. Princess Lyrithan felt her silver skin grow cold. He did not argue. He did not protest. He simply walked away in silence. And humanity walked with him. The ambassador's eyes found Lyrithan in the crowd. They held there for a moment, and Lyrithan felt as if the human woman could see through a century of time to that moment in the Great Hall. "We withdrew because we understood something important. You were not ready to see us as equals. So we built. We grew. We developed technologies and capabilities beyond what you thought possible. Not to prove you wrong, not for revenge, but because that is what humans do. We build for the future, even when we will not live to see it. She looked back at the Emperor. We have returned now because we choose to. We help those in need because we can. We ask for nothing because we need nothing from you. The young species you dismissed has become something you did not expect. And we did it not by conquering or destroying, but by being patient. The Emperor stared at her. For once, he had no response. Commander Daniel Cole passed away 62 years ago, Ambassador Burke continued. He never spoke publicly about what happened at that assembly. But before he died, he asked us to deliver a message if we ever returned to Valori space. Princess Lurthan felt her heart beating faster. Daniel Cole. She had never known his name. What message? The Emperor asked. Ambassador Burke looked directly at the princess now. Her gray eyes were gentle but unwavering. He said, I hope she learned something. The silence in the throne room was absolute. Ambassador Burke bowed slightly. The correct depth for an equal addressing equals. Humanity offers friendship to any species willing to accept it. Not because you are powerful, not because you are ancient, but because friendship is what we choose to offer. Think about it. Take as long as you need. We are patient. We have learned to be. And with those words, she turned and walked away in silence, just as Daniel Cole had done 100 years before. But this time, the door she left behind her was open.